It is 1 p.m. I will call this workshop on Monday, 19th, 2024 of the Wenatchee School District School Board to order. Take it away.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you, President Norton, for getting us kicked off and ready to go. A lot of what we're going to do today came from the notes that I had taken during our self-reflection that happened in May from the school board presentation. And so a lot of what we have today is just the board working together as a board, taking some time to talk and have some discussion about different items. And yeah, so using that as a template to get us started, then we will kind of jump into it. So Liz is going to throw a slide deck up here to kind of guide us through today, and we'll be able to have a variety of conversations as we move forward. So I'm excited about the time and to energize the group on a Monday afternoon as we get rolling here. So the first thing for us to do is an inclusive opener. And so I would just ask everyone to think about something that made their summer enjoyable and more fun. So anything from a sleep-in day to a travel opportunity with friends or anything in between is 100% acceptable. And so I'll kick it off while you are all maybe thinking about a story or something that you might want to share from the summer. And I shared this at another meeting as well. So my youngest daughter, Mackenzie, had a great summer, but it started off interesting. She was one of the many teachers that did not have their contract renewed in the Wenatchee School District, so that kind of kicked off her summer. And then 2 weeks later, she got married to the love of her life in Omi Gardens, and so that was wonderful. It was a small, really teeny tiny reception and ceremony, maybe 25 family members. And I keep referring to like Frank Sinatra, they did it their way, which is really cool. They just, if something was traditional, it may have happened and it may not have happened, but whatever it was, it looked different. And then she worked as a barista over the summer. And then 2 weeks ago today, we found out that she was hired at Sunny Slope as a first grade teacher. So she's back in action and we're loving it. So very excited for Mackenzie. And we have a tendency to try to insert ourselves in our children's lives as often as we can. So this was just another summer of those opportunities. Like, where can we insert ourselves? So it was super fun. So thank you for that. And anyone want to kick us off with some sharing for the summer?
Sure, I'll go.
Thanks, Tucker.
We every year I make my family, it's the whole family that is made to go on a raft trip. And so this year we're going to go on a raft trip to BC. We just so realized that we through the school we got these Silverwood vouchers for the kids, and so that was the one thing this summer we had to do was go to Silverwood, and we realized we hadn't put that on the calendar. The way to this trip in BC, it kind of swung through Silverwood. So we decided we just make the trip start with a trip to a theme park / water park. And the trick is you don't start a trip that your family doesn't really want to go on with an awesome experience to a theme park / water park. And so we drive to Wenatchee. We spend 12 hours at a water park. I was like, okay, you guys ready to go rafting? They're like, go, stay here. So I had a great river trip. My family had a great theme park trip. But next time, if I do it again, it'll be in reverse order. Where they gut it out for camping, and then they're like, but guess what? At the end, there's a water park. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Thanks, Tucker. Appreciate that. Anyone else? That's amazing. Wow. Thanks for sharing, Maria. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Julie? Okay, Martin.
Yeah, or I only have one event highlight for the summer. We were heading over for a baby shower, and in the cell phone blackout zone in Tumwater Canyon, came out of it and said, "Why don't you turn around?" Well, we were the ones that had a short trip. The Boise parents were dodging the fires in the Blue Mountains and wondering whether the freeway would be open. Anyway, they were already in Eastern Oregon. So we spent 48 hours hanging around for this early event. And so we have our first granddaughter who arrived a little bit early, but didn't have any special needs afterwards. And she chirps like nothing. And I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to say this, but they didn't know what to call her. And they gave her a second name of Birdie because she chirps. Hazel. Yeah, that's a little safer.
Very special. Thanks, Martin. Julie, did you want to go?
Yeah, so my summer has just been made up of spontaneous activities that we did not see coming at the outset. This was one of our few summers. We always try to plan a big trip now, or so far the last couple of years, we've had a big family trip planned. This year, we went into the summer thinking we have nothing planned. Next thing we know, my daughter's got a soccer tournament in San Diego. My son's baseball team ends up making it not only to regionals, but then winning regionals and going to the just getting back yesterday from the World Series in Richmond. So we went from having no activities to spending a week in San Diego, which, not a place I would have necessarily thought I would go, but we had an absolute blast going to the ocean and, soccer on top of it. And my daughter's team did well, but, could have been better. But just a bunch of activities that I haven't done since I was a kid. And so to be able to do that with them was pretty fun. And then just the constant going of thinking, okay, well, that's cool. My son's going to go to regionals and have that experience. And then they end up winning regionals. And it was a frantic 10 days to get fundraising and everything ready. So I didn't get to make the trip to Richland, but he got to go with my parents actually had to take him because my husband and I were going to Vegas for a few days for our 21st anniversary. So all of a sudden we went from a summer of absolutely nothing to we haven't had a minute to pause, but some of the best experiences these kids will probably have. So it was pretty wild couple weeks. So now we're getting ready for fair and school and keeping it going.
Fantastic. Sounds like it was all meant to be and that you ended up having a great time. Thanks, Julie.
I will never go into a summer saying, I have no plans. It's going to be so boring.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
My beer.
Yeah. All right. Miranda.
This summer, man, it's been so busy. I don't know what to think. So I took advantage of the summer. I've traveled. I was actually gone majority of this summer. I'm going to Chicago. My dad's side lives there. So I go there pretty frequently. I think I pushed it to stay for 10 days in Chicago with family, just doing whatever my family wants to do. And then I turned around. I took my stepkids to Montana. I came back. I was home for a day and a half. Turned around, we drove 10 hours to Billings, Montana for 5-6 days. Came back. I went up to Lake Wenatchee, turned around, came back, stayed there for 3 days, and then multiple trips to see family and friends over between Tacoma, Olympia, and Seattle. So I practically lived out of my suitcase for the first half of summer. And so this is my third week home. So it's been really nice and going to concerts. So I really like concerts. So I've been to at least 3 or 4 this summer. I went to one just this last weekend and now I'm ready to settle down and try to ease back into a normal routine of everything. So it's been a very eventful summer for sure. But I'm happy I got that opportunity to go out and go do things that I haven't done in a very long time. Just go out and travel around. So that was pretty good. Yeah. Minimal sleep.
Sounds like you have a closer relationship with your washing machine probably than you have in a long time. You're probably home just enough to do laundry and then you're out again and leave again. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. It's glad to hear that everybody had some memorable experiences during the summer. Part of our time together today was working off of the board and my own personal desire to be transparent with our community and to share with our community the work that we're doing and engaging in. And so I thought I would share my superintendent goals, which you all saw in May and in June, but I thought I would share them again, not only as a reminder to the board, but also to our community, the work that will be engaged in over the course of the year. And then we'll get into some other conversations about more board workshop planning and some learning walks for the board, and then communication commitments as well. So we'll kind of just roll right into those conversations if that sounds okay. All right, let's do that. Let's see here. So the first one here is, and I'll just read and highlight the strategic plan year 3. Strategic plan will revolve around the continuation of data for the Big 6 student data points. The strategic plan will focus on the work for board workshops and showcased once a month for board meetings as well. So that's my commitment to the board to make sure that the strategic plan is outlined and we have points of contact throughout board workshops and through board meetings. And so we'll see a consistent thread throughout the school year for that. And no matter what the district is dealing with, and no matter what it is that we have on our plate, then we'll have that as a consistent thread as we move forward. We also have our equity program audit data that has specifically helped to clarify the needs in our system for our Tier 1 instruction and incorporation of English language development strategies for all students. Along with increasing quality communication strategies with our stakeholders, our equity program audit goal will focus on systemic improvement in the ELD instruction. So throughout the next year, our intentional focus will be placed on curriculum and addressing disproportionality, as well as working on the English language development. So that is another place where we will spend some consistent time and energy working through. Goal 3, bond and levy work. So the work for our long-range facilities plan will continue through our facilities committee. And the levy work will be driven through work to engage the community and build trust. And we will work with the community to share the importance of passing the educational program and operations levy. And we'll have some very specific and intentional focus on the levy will begin once the school is off to a great beginning. So we'll be starting the school year off, which tomorrow is opening day. And again, a nice reminder for all of you, if you'd like to stop by Wenatchee High School Auditorium tomorrow at 8:30, we'll be having our opening day assembly, and you're all welcome to stop by if you have that time available. Goal 4 is continuing to support our inclusive practices. Supporting our special education department as they roll out a new structure this year to further guide the challenges of inclusionary practices. We will be challenging and supporting this department to lead with vision, supporting staff where needed, and to bring in professional development for all staff will continue. And then finally, our budget alignment. Using a multi-year approach, the Wenatchee School District will work to further align the district's revenues and expenditures as our enrollment declines. This work will include a restructuring committee for the Wenatchee School District led by the superintendent with community involvement, as well as website collection of data for the wider public to view. And we are working on just an update on that. We'll have a further update at our board meeting next Tuesday as well on August 27th about the restructuring committee. We have a few of the pieces ready to go with that restructuring group, and we are looking forward to the school year getting started so that we can grab some parents and community members to help fill out the remaining pieces of that restructuring committee so that we can dive into that work. So that will also be part of the budget update that we have on August 27th. Nope. And that is, those are the superintendent goals, which all of you have seen and saw in May and June as we went through my evaluation process. Also, all of you know and understand that there were a variety of things that came up through the evaluation process that I have as supplemental goals for the team as I work through my second year as superintendent. Awesome. Any questions, comments, or concerns here? Okay. moving right along. This is a list of our upcoming workshops, and I just wanted to share them with you. We all, every week in the weekly, we have a list of, well, there's a link that you all can look at to know the topics and agenda items for upcoming board meetings and for workshops. These are ones that we have laid out right now consistently, but also I wanted you to take a look at these to make sure, one, they were the items that you feel that you want to have in front of you and that you feel are needed and necessary. Or we can change those, because a board workshop, the time in a board workshop is precious, because it's only once a month that we get time to be together and work in this realm. So if this is not what you feel like you need to see, we can have a conversation around that. The only one that is kind of set in scheduling stone is September's. We have a policy workshop, which Miranda was instrumental in helping us set up, that involves a presenter coming. Is it Marissa Rathbone is coming? And so she'll be here to present not only some of WAS's policy work, but also a calendar of events, and then some of the important things that we need to know as a board as well. So that's the only one that is kind of like, yeah, we probably need to stick to that one. The other ones can be massaged as necessary. So just want to open that up to conversation. Does that look like some of the items that you would like to see as a board? And if not, what are some other things that maybe you would enjoy seeing? Because we can also shift some of these to a board meeting presentation and then save that board workshop time for something else that might be on your mind or present.
When are we running the levy? So I know the M&O levies needs to happen this year.
Yeah.
So it's February.
Yeah, it'll be in February.
So November will still kind of give us an idea of what our finances look like, and also give us plenty of time to make some adjustments to that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that will be the first time that we as a board will, because we're going to have to make some decisions on what that levy looks like and what it is that we're actually going out for potentially before that workshop time. So we'll be dealing with that as we go along. So good question, Tucker. Martin.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I think the levy November is kind of last minute, but it's essential to do the early planning and preparation before that, really beginning now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yep. Sean is having preliminary meetings with folks throughout the state as we're speaking. Mm-hmm.
Would there be value in swapping November with December, October?
There sure could be. Yeah. Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. I mean, I agree. I think the early you can get in front of it.
I think so, because 4 years ago, stuff got handed over in like week 2 of December, and it was right in the middle, with a vacation.
Yeah.
Is kind of late. So theoretically, if you do it in mid-November and you've done your planning ahead of time, but I think October is safer.
Okay. And I'll just let you know that even with that November date, that is not when planning would be starting at all. That would be the update for the board, but we can swap those. Yeah, we just it may be more conversations about decision-making and pre-planning, as opposed to here's what it is that we're looking at. So that'll be great. Yeah, we can make that shift. I'm sure our team of comprehensive school counselors and their program update will be thrilled to have another month of planning on their own. So that'll be fine. No problem. So we can make that shift. Other items that stand out as things we may want to massage or look at?
Not a date change, but a sort of targeting and wording change for January. Budget's a lot more than about reduction.
Okay.
It's about optimizing. It's about looking for improvements, and we're talking about how to create programs and develop student pools that we can serve. So I think that that's already very much part of the budget strategy, but I think the budget strategy is offensive, not and defensive, both.
Great. I like that.
Yeah, I assume as long as we're not anticipating any massive issues like we had last year, that January is a good time to start revisiting where we're at with the budget, but I think we probably should also put in a component in February, because by the time we meet in February, it's going to be after our levy, I assume, or after our levy.
Yep.
And so, or around it, so we may have some further massaging to do based on how the levy shapes up. But I don't know, maybe that's included with the mid-year data, but just leaving that a little bit flexible, just kind of in case.
I think that's a good idea. I appreciate that. Let me write that down.
And Corey, I think we need to make sure we have budget committee meetings before December.
Absolutely. Stand by. I have lost my place momentarily. Here we are. Okay, there we go. Yes, our first budget committee meetings will be in September. Yes, definitely. Thank you. And try to keep close to a monthly cadence on those, if not more if needed, as we get closer to that work. 'Cause I think that's at the minimum. Yeah. Other thoughts?
For the March conversation, I think that like for goal 2 and goal 4 for you, like how we're approaching multi-language learners, how we're approaching inclusion.
Yes.
We're making some changes to the Walk to Read program. We're making some changes to the like how you're teaching math at the elementary level.
Mhm.
Maybe we can have that be as a part of that, as how that's going, is as we change that approach. Not only are we adding, kind of multi-language learners, bringing some of that in, asking the classroom teachers to do some more of that. But along with inclusion's been kind of, a transition for a lot of classroom teachers. So how that is going, I think would be an important part of that conversation.
I like it. So an update to some of the new programs and changes that have taken place. Yeah.
And ideally some input from the teachers who are actually doing the work on how it's going and how they feel like this change in policy is actually working in the field.
I love it.
If I can add kind of, and it doesn't maybe need to be a workshop topic, but as we start this new school year, because of some of the changes we made to address the keep wanting to say Newberry, Columbia closure, can you provide us with some sort of ongoing updates of how the transitions are going at these schools? Maybe in your superintendent report or something. It doesn't need to be a board workshop, but just so we can be aware of if there are some issues that we may get emails about from parents, how the lunches are working, how the bus routes are working, just little touch points here and there, so we can know that the sort of the consolidation is going fairly smooth, or that there are some bumps in the road that we need to just be aware of.
Absolutely. Yep. That is very reasonable request that we can definitely take care of. And that'll be, I think that'll be of great interest, I think, to not only you as board members, but to our greater school community and the community in general too. So excellent idea. Thank you.
And Corey, I have a comment, and linking the goals with the workshops there. The 5 goals you got cover a well-balanced spectrum, I think, covering a variety of areas. And the first 2 are data, where we want to see, and we've all talked about this, a shift from planning deeply to beginning to track the data very carefully. And then the second one is equity audit beyond just English language development. And that's a similar situation where we need to take stock. Now, you've talked about doing monthly follow-ups on that, and you talk about the February one being mid-year data. So this is a thought, not a suggestion, that we need to be able, in the course of tracking our data more aggressively and shifting from startup to measuring mode. But we need to do that in a disaggregated sense, and in a sense that feeds into how much progress are we making, not only with academic performance and achievement in study areas, but also an achievement in getting equitable performance across all student groups. And so I think that's a huge overarching topic, but I think let's just make sure it fits in somewhere between the goals and the monthly updates and the workshops.
Yeah, that makes sense and fits in there intentionally as well. Appreciate that. Kim, you're backing me up on these notes, aren't you? Okay. So she's typing away and then I jot my notes down and then we put them together and make some sense out of it. Usually hers already makes sense. So we'll just go from there. But it's good. Thank you, Kim. What we kind of moved into that naturally because you're all amazing at what you do, but what else might be potentially missing from the workshops that you're thinking of at this point? And those may come up serendipitously along the school year or intentionally along the school year as well. But what I want to do and what we made commitments to based on the feedback of my first year evaluation is intentional updates on the strategic plan and the equity audit. And then obviously all the other goals that I have succinctly laid out. But if you are thinking if there's something that is missing here, or if you have ideas that you believe something is missing along the way, let us know, because the only thing that we have longitudinally planned out are the workshops. And then of course the milestones that Sean has built into the calendar based on budget. But then we plan our meetings, we plan them out intentionally as well, but things just pop up every once in a while. And so make sure to keep those things in mind and share them with me unless anyone has any ideas right now. Okay. Great. I like it. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Let's see what we have next here. Classroom visits and learning walks. So this topic is one that I think we've talked about in the past, and Julie and I worked on with some input from our learning and teaching team is how are we getting the board to actually see some of the things that we're implementing in the classroom specifically and intentionally. And we had conversations from a variety of things like, do we change the structure of our workshops? Do we put workshops in the building and we have a board workshop and then we move on to some learning walks? And we kind of got away from that idea and went with more of a, let's do one learning walk a quarter. Let's get into 4 different schools, 2 elementaries, 1 middle and a high school. And let's get our board out there to see the work of the strategic plan and the essential strategies. Now, what I do know is that Tuesdays are challenging for a couple of our board members. And so we're going to go back and revisit the dates. And I haven't let Heidi and the district trainers know that yet, but they're nimble. They'll be all right. Are there days that work better for this team so that we can get those planned out in ways that we can get most all of us there? I know Fridays are great for Miranda. So that's good. Yep.
If I'm known ahead of time, like 2-3 weeks in advance, like it's going to be in the middle of the week, like such as the board workshops, that's perfectly fine too. I can make something work. So.
Okay. No, I appreciate that. And if there are other days that work better for others, yeah, let me know.
Uh, Thursdays work fabulous. We can make Fridays work. And Wednesdays work except the third Wednesday of the month.
Excellent. So between Kim and I, we will triangulate on some additional dates, and then we'll bring Heidi and the learning and teaching team in, and we'll propose some other dates, and maybe we'll have a couple of different options so that we can pick and choose, and then we'll be good to go. Any thoughts or concerns about the learning walks themselves, or any requests from the team on which particular schools that you would like to go see?
obviously the building principals want to showcase their best, right?
Mhm.
And one of the things that we did when we were doing PLCs, I know Julie and I were teamed and we saw, the school, some of the facilitators that, or the teachers that, that were on their A game. But we also asked to see where it wasn't as structured, and just to have a comparison. Nobody's gonna wanna, I mean, the intent is not to target, but it's like, okay, well, this is a prime example of how it should work, and this is what we're working towards. So how do we, I know it's kind of challenging to not, say, well, we're going to do this classroom visit and teachers are going to be wondering whether they're at the top or at the bottom of their game. But it was very, it was good for, at least for me to see, this building has, or this department has some really good structures, and this other department has work to do. And this is what, not below performance, but maybe more of a basic.
And to your point, there's a continuum on all of the work that we're, engaging in. So there's going to be people that are maybe ahead of the curve in some times, and then other people that are working in their areas of growth. So I think that that's a great idea. So no matter where we go, seeing different examples of the implementation of the same strategies would be fantastic. I like that.
Yeah, I think I'd kind of defer to some of the principals to just see who has the interest in having us see what they're dealing with, whether the good, bad, and the uglies, some of their struggles. I think it's important that we see not only the successes, but where are the challenges. So making sure that these aren't just, we walk in and everybody's welcoming and it's rainbows and lollipops and things. I mean, a real, to make it valuable, it's like, we want to see the things they're doing well, but we also want to see where there's some things that we can help with improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. The areas of growth that we can continue focusing on and working on. I think that's a fair picture to represent and the reality of the work, right? So excellent. Okay. Other thoughts, Martin?
Yeah, I suddenly woke up to the feedback I got from the cafe ambassadors about the value of boards meeting inside buildings. And in the context of making the board and district more human, not just to the principal or not just on a program, but more generally. And I think I talked to you a little bit about that.
Yes.
And, we had done very little of that. And I was just thinking about it. There's, if you contrast the pros and cons, you can go as an individual board member and you can sit in for a while and you get to see things. Then if the whole board comes, it's a little bit of a dog and pony show sometimes. And, that doesn't achieve the goal of making, and I think it's not just making the board be part of the team, it's making the district office be part of the team. And people feel that, we're actually seeing reality and rubbing shoulders. So just making a general comment, and I had completely forgotten about that input from Cafe until you began talking about it, because I think there's a lot of truth in it and it's not easy to do. But if we can find ways in which we can extend into more of an interactive way, obviously not making promises or false impressions, but just so that the buildings feel connected. If we can have that as part of our objectives, that would be really good. And maybe one workshop could be in a building.
Yeah, great reminder of that conversation, Martin. Thank you. Okay, excellent. So we commit to coming back with some options for dates that are non-Tuesdays, preferably Wednesday morning or maybe a Thursday, except for the third Wednesday of the month. Yes, no, that's good. We will find that. That is not a problem. Teaching is happening every single day, and we'll work with our district trainer, with our district trainers to make sure that their schedules are open. Because what we want to do is we want to pair each board member with a district trainer and or a member of the learning and teaching team or cabinet to go in and have us all be part of that experience, because I think that'll be good for all of us. So, okay, fantastic. Thanks for the feedback. I appreciate that.
I'll just jump on Martin's comment real quick, because
Yeah.
I think, we've had the conversation too, that it would be nice to do an actual workshop in the schools so that they can feel invited and come and participate in the workshop. But I think there's the trick of, if we do it during business hours, then you've got open access to a school campus and whatnot. So I think if there is a feasible way we can do something like that, I think that would be a nice thing to try to do to make the building feel connected, invited.
Mhm.
But I realize the safety challenge there with an open board meeting while students are present.
Right, like at 1 o'clock, yeah. Mhm. Good point, Julie. Okay. Let's see here. Okay, one of the things that we had talked about at our board workshop, where we did our self-reflection, was communication commitments. And what does communication look like between the board, with the board, around the board, through the board, over the board, those kind of conversations. And so, and I know that we're all, well, recent news has brought us to understand how we follow PDC compliance, right? But I just wanted to open up a conversation here with you all on what does our communication commitments look like, and what are some areas that might be a concern that you'd like to talk about, or an area that is something that we do well, or a focus that we might want to work on. So this is not Corey's conversation necessarily. This is definitely the board's conversation, and having you just kind of dive in here. And these are not all the different ways that we communicate, but they were just kind of like the ones that I brainstormed for a moment there. So I didn't know, is there a direction or a space where you all want to go? Harkening back on that conversation we had with during the self-reflection board workshop in May. So I just want to throw that open and see if there's a space where we want to talk about any of these things or any other communication protocols.
I mean, I think that kind of the elephant in the room was how we were handling emails from the community, like certainly during the Columbia stuff, like
Right.
how we were handling emails from the community, because they were being sent to all of us, and we were kind of having the board president handle all that responses.
Yep.
And then questions from the press, because again, we kind of channel that all through the board president. Is that the route we want to continue to go? I mean, I think it was certainly for the volume. I don't envy you those responses. But
Very true.
We aren't able to communicate as efficiently because of the rule. Thank
Yep.
you.
Okay, mate. Yep.
So when we're kind of wanting to stay in lockstep, I understand the value of that, especially as we're talking about something that we haven't made a decision on officially as a board, but making sure that we are giving the public kind of the reality that we're all working independently on the decisions, especially difficult decisions, and we're not doing something as like we're going to be unanimous no matter what. I think certainly again for the Columbia thing, we all got there in our own way, but I don't want it to feel like we're colluding or anything like that. So being up front now before whatever it is happens, because it turns out schools are hard to run.
Yeah.
But how do we want to handle that communication? Is it a case by case? Is it like we're going to continue to have the board president hold that kind of main line of communication for emails to the board? Are we going to have press releases go through them? How do you guys think we should handle that, knowing that something is going to happen? I don't even know what it is, but we're just gonna assume.
Yeah, there will be something. Great. Thanks for teeing that up, Tucker. Yeah. Thoughts?
So my thought on that is I do still think we need to have emails that come in to the board in general, have one source of going out, and ideally the board president. And when I respond, I keep it fairly neutral, because that is speaking on behalf of, in some ways, the board. And I'll copy Corey on everything so he knows, and sometimes he'll look at what I'm sending out. I can't copy everybody because of the OPMA things. And so I think that still continues to be probably the best way to do it. Same with the press releases. Now they're getting a little sneaky now, I realize, and trying to send individual requests for comment to each individual board member. I still think because we are elected representatives of each of our individual districts and constituents with different values, ideals, things they want you to know about, I think it's important that each member feels like they can directly communicate with the constituents. So if there are individual emails that somebody wants you to know about, I think it is appropriate for you to individually respond to them because you are elected by them. And I think as long as you're clear, this is your position on the matter, and not speaking for the board as a whole, I think that's appropriate because that's who you're here to represent. So, and I think we've kind of, that's been the theory of it, where now I think we need to be a little careful is because we are getting those the requests from the press that we're going to each individual too. And so I would still treat those as, send those to Corey or the president, and to do the official response from the board. But that's kind of my thought on it.
Yeah, and I agree with Julie. This is, that's kind of the role of the board president. I think we've all been in, the three of us have been in that role, and there's always, don't worry, there's always a challenge that will come up during everyone's presidency, whether it's COVID, whether it's a superintendent hiring, closing of a school. So everybody gets their fair share of kind of being stuck to replying emails. But I also get your perspective where you're coming from. It seems like, only one person out of five cares about this, because I've seen it all, right? Behind the scenes, I'm pushing for something, but they just hear from the board president. So, oh, well, the other board members don't care. They're not doing anything about our student safety or, whatever it is. But to me, that's just coming from a place of lack of understanding, because they probably have never served on an elected position or a board, right? I mean, I've seen it all. And as an individual, I know the work that I'm doing, and I have to just be able to separate that, because I know we have processes and protocols. So I get what you're coming from. Now, there's something that, I feel passionate about, and I do have a stance. I do, or in any email that comes individually to me or to one or two board members, absolutely. By all means, engage, but it's worked well. But I mean, if we want to take a different approach, and again, it's just reminding the public that this is the way. It doesn't mean we don't care or we're not doing anything about it. There's a lot of behind the scenes work and a lot of time that goes into it. And again, I think sometimes it comes from a place of lack of understanding.
And I would say if we do get an all board email in and one of you feels really strongly that you want to field a response or also supplement a response individually, I think it's appropriate to reach out to the board president and to the superintendent and say, hey, would you mind if I also followed up on this with, a separate, that way folks know individual issues are being addressed as well.
Should that be a CC, the board president? If you're going to respond to an email comes in to the whole board, you want to jump on it, should you then CC the president so they know that someone has addressed it, or should that go through the district?
Normally, we would CC the superintendent.
Yeah. But I would probably reach out if you were going to kind of break with the protocol, say we get the all board email in, but it's something you want to really respond to, instead of just shooting out the email, I would send an email to Corey and I that says, hey, I would like to respond on this as well. And then copy Corey on the response. That way it's not weird and disconjuncted because you've responded and we didn't know because it went to Corey. But that's just to know in advance that there's this interest in doing that.
I'm going to start with it's messy. I think our existing policy on the board president being the spokesperson, which would apply to all media and anything that is an official position of the board as a group, that's a black and white hard line that we all need to respect. At the other extreme, you get to us as individual board members. We're talking to people, writing to people all around. I think you need to be very, very careful if you engage that to say, this is my individual position. And that's not written in policy. I guess the other generality is if you try, we have policy and I'm fairly comfortable with our policy. I'm not saying we could make it, I don't see any changes. If we would try to write a, I forget what we call it, we have a board pattern of behavior. I think we'd be like a regulator trying to write regulations, and rapidly we'd have 20 pages and they wouldn't take care of all the nuances. So we can't go there. We've then got to trust each other. So the phrase that comes to my mind is, if you want to break ranks, that's as important as the board being the only spokesperson. And breaking ranks can mean that you disagree with something, or you want to rock the boat. Then I think your channel, if you're going to do that, would be to let the superintendent know. Superintendent can let the president know, and you do that before you do anything, not after. That's got to be a behavioral thing, and I think it is. Then, of course, there's the much softer one that somebody's got a great idea and you want to say that's wonderful. Then you can still follow that route, but you can do that. And there are times when I don't tell anybody having a communication, when I judge that it's in kind of embryonic form and it's a relationship I have with a person, and I'm as much as anything exchanging ideas, because you don't want to clutter up Kim and Corey and the president and bury them in correspondence. So that's why I said it's messy. So I'm trying to draw in my own thought. Spokespersons, black and white. If you want to break ranks, if I call it that, tell people first and act secondly. You are going to behave with other people and policy. And that's as far where I get.
As Martin, as you were sharing that, I think there are times, because it is messy, but I think there are times when we often wonder if other board members have gotten the same email. So when it comes to the board through the district website, you can tell if everyone's getting it, and that there is a response that goes back to let them know their message was received, and then either Julie or I will have a response as well. But there are other times when you get an individual email. Maybe it's from when it comes from the press and we know that it's from the press, then I think we shift that responsibility to our board president. But there are other times that I think throughout the spring that you've gotten an email that you may or may not know went to everyone as well. What has been the protocol in the past to know if it's an email that everyone has received? Because all of you could easily reach out to me, and then I can reach out to the board members and get an idea of what that looks like. But that might be an uncertainty that's out there.
I think when I see that and it looks like a general question, I would normally go to the superintendent and say, I got this. It looks like the thing that I shouldn't be answering individually, and then go find out.
Okay.
And then I was just thinking a little bit. I know a couple of people told me, yes, I deliberately sent individual emails, the same email to every board member on this topic. And I didn't think we necessarily knew when we got blind copied. But I guess you would, if if it comes to you uniquely on the school system, then it is you. It's not. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Good question. Other thoughts on that one? You just may not know.
Yeah, I mean, I see them if it goes to the board, what comes into all boards, and then I know everybody's got it. When things come into me directly, up until this last year, I don't think paid all that much attention, because it wasn't either something that necessarily needed to be responded to. It was more like a comment or something. And so you just got that feel like it didn't really matter if it went to one or everybody else. So this is, I think maybe it's becoming more of a issue now, that maybe we need to be more aware of, but up until now, I hadn't really thought about it.
I think we just use or just our, common sense. Thank you. If it's something, if it's, what I've done in the past, I kind of just forward the email FYI. And then I think I've gotten a response from Corey saying, oh yeah, Martin got the same message. And then I think also we need to be careful as we're talking about this. We will often get emails from people that, are not happy or they want to see something changed. And they will reach to us as a group or individually. And just a reminder, we can't solve the problem. A simple reply, include the superintendent, I'm including the superintendent in this email. He will help you address this because we don't want to get into the minutia of providing wrong information, misguiding our community, our parents. And that's not the role of the board.
I'm glad you said that because I'd forgotten. Quite frequently, I'll get a message like that over the years. And then you respond to the person without addressing their complaint. You tell them that I've listened to you and I'm forwarding it to the superintendent. And that's the fail-safe way. And so another word, you talk about common sense, that I think is an important one, legal word, disclosure. When got this dilemma of you're not authoritative, if you disclose what you did to the superintendent, that's an important legal and business safety tool to remember, that it's good to disclose.
So it sounds like we're responding, we're including Corey on every response anyway. Corey, if you see something that like two people respond to the same question, will you just let us know?
Yes,
Just-
absolutely.
Because we might, again, might not know, but if
Mhm.
you are seeing responses to everything and you're like, oh, these people got the exact same question
Yes.
and they responded to it individually,
Mhm.
just like, by the way,
Yep.
this is coming to a lot of people.
That sounds good. Oh, yeah. Yes, we are. Yeah. We are one. Yep. Yep. Thanks, Kim. Yep. Good point.
And sometimes if I think it's very low scope, I only send it to Kim. So actually you can protect Corey a little bit if I think it's chatter.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, thank you. Other thoughts? Miranda?
Not going to repeat everything that everyone has said. I think the only thing that has stuck out to me is that to respond individually, if you feel that passionate about it, yes, please do, and let Corey or Kim know about it too. One thing I have seen when engaging with the community, or I've gone to the parent advocacy meeting, is yes, be careful what you say, because a lot of things have been misconstrued, even for myself, and what had been implied or what I have said. And I have gone back and said, no, this is not what was said. This is what I've clearly stated black and white, and surely not to insinuate any promises or this is what my intentions are. It's just being very general neutral about everything, even though it's some of those decisions are not the most fun things to do in your lifetime. So.
Excellent. Thanks, Miranda.
I think there's one other aspect of it, as I was thinking, in my cultural background, we have what we call cabinet authority, which is like a school board, and it would be a cabinet in a parliamentary system, is you all work together, you all vote against each other, but once the majority position is taken, everybody's job is to support that majority decision. That's our board policy. And I think that's not a bad way of looking at how we should behave and how we frame our correspondence.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Excellent. I'll just a couple of points on the text messaging is and everyone does a great job in this realm, but I'll often send a message to the group as a whole, and everyone does a great job of not replying to that. But a lot of times I just need to get you all information, usually fairly quickly. And so that's a nice way for me to drop that information to you. And then if you have further clarifications or questions or information that you want to share, then we do that on a separate channel, whether that's email or a text between the board member and the superintendent. So I try to use that sparingly for things that are emergent mostly, and things that are like, you need to know this right now before school is out or something like that. So everyone does a great job there. So just appreciate that. All right.
Yeah, I'll just put my public records hat on and say the fewer text messages, the better, because it does create the retention issues and whatnot. And it is in some ways a little more secretive, I think, even than the
Yep.
email. So it's like, I appreciate the getting the updates out timely. I would encourage follow-up be by phone or email or something that we can manage more
Yep.
in-house, and avoid those issues.
Great point. Great point. Thanks, Julie. Okay, excellent. Moving right along, we had just a little background and context here. As a policy committee, we have been we talked about talking about cell phones in the spring, and we kind of poised ourselves to be looking and doing some research and homework over the summer. And we had our first policy committee meeting last week on Thursday and talked further about cell phones. And this is great. We have what we feel is an adequate cell phone policy when it comes from maintaining cell phones and the use of cell phones during the class time. But we know that we need to do some strengthening in that area. And then we really need to look at is the procedural aspects of cell phone use, because it varies from building to building. And so one of the things on a subsequent slide, I'll share with you the process that I would like to request from the board to move forward with cell phone discussions. But in the meantime, I wanted to have us just have a conversation about cell phones itself. What are your feelings? What are some of your values? And so I just have a few questions for us to just kind of share amongst one another to see where everybody kind of stands on these questions. And they're not super controversial. They're just kind of information. So the first question is, in general, what are your thoughts on cell phones at school? Do you believe there are times when students should have access to their phones? And then where does the phone go in order to alleviate the distraction? Just kind of out of curiosity. So yeah, I'll just kind of throw that out there, and I'll model by just sharing my thoughts on cell phones right now, because I think that there is a disparity on people's viewpoints and opinions of cell phone. I mean, in a perfect world, I think I would love to have cell phones available to students to use if we can actually use them in a productive way in the classroom and they're benefiting the students' educational experience in the classroom. However, what I do know to be a reality is not everyone has the same amount of discretion in their cell phone use and their same ability to monitor themselves to stay on track. And those are the problems. So my thoughts are they can be a tool in the school and in the classroom. However, I think that it can sometimes be a management nightmare from our classroom practitioners keeping everyone on task and on track. However, I have seen it go very well in certain situations. I do believe that there are times when students should have access to their phone. And I think this is the question that I kind of want to set the stage for us, because all of you are parents, and some of you have, yeah, go ahead.
There are times during the school day, I'm assuming that you're saying.
Correct. Yes.
All right.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry for that clarification. Yep.
From that big to say what kids do outside of school.
Oh yeah. Right. Right.
Oh, see, I thought we were all getting cell phones. I was like, awesome, they're gonna give us all cell
Yeah.
phones. I was like,
Yeah.
oh no, we're gonna have a much more difficult conversation than that.
I love it. I love it. And I think herein lies the conversation. And so you as parents will have great insight here, because one of the things that as we were doing our homework over the summer, you see that when you're engaged in the community, there are some community members who will say, no, I need to have my son or daughter, my child have access to their phone all the time in case I need to communicate with them, or if we have an emergent situation, or they're not going where they're supposed to go after school. And then there are other family members that are community members and parents that would say, no, I need my student not to be on their phone, but to be engaged in the learning that is happening in the classroom. And then on breaks and at lunch, they can check their phone. So that's one of the questions. And then where does the phone go in order to alleviate the distraction? And so some classrooms and some schools have lockers. Some folks just expect the students to manage themselves and their own behavior. It's in a pocket, it's in a handbag, it's in the backpack. I was sharing with Maria and Miranda that there's a new trend with a device called a Yonder pouch. I don't know if anyone has seen a Yonder pouch, but they're little pouches that people that go to a concert scenario or another entertainment event where the artist doesn't want cell phones present or wants people to engage, you get a Yonder pouch and you put your device in the Yonder pouch and there's a magnet that closes it, and then you keep your cell phone with you in some capacity. And then when the event's over or you leave the event, you unlock your Yonder pouch, you get your device, you put the pouch back in the container. So there are different variations of all of these things that are happening. And as we were kind of researching over the summer, yeah, these are just some questions that kind of popped up. So I'd love to hear from the board or engage in some conversation or discussion here, because these are the conversations that we need to have with our community, our practitioners, and our students, honestly. Yeah.
Just as we're like, so I went to a class at the high school, and I was there for all 4 of the block classes.
Yeah.
And the number of people, I was like, oh, everyone has a computer here. So first of all, just talking like there's some things that you need to do with a phone. I can't think of anything you need to do on a phone that you don't have access to on your computer.
I like it.
So if this is, the internet, I understand the access to the World Wide Web and like teaching kids how to find data, not memorize the data. They have a computer at every grade level. They have a computer. So the likelihood that they're going to need a cell phone for an academic purpose, in my mind, is like 0. So there's that piece. Second of all, like the parent access, right? We've heard both sides of, I want my kid to be accessible and I want my kid to stop freaking texting me during the day.
Yeah.
And I think that the less distractions that we provide kids in a learning environment, the more likely they are to learn.
Yeah.
So.
And the more of a disruption our teachers dealing with, right? Because not only are we talking about the learning environment or students needing that time to be distraction-free, but also being able to allow the teachers to teach and not work on classroom management regarding cell phones.
I used to disqualify myself from this conversation thinking I was prejudiced, but I'm not sure that's so severe as I thought. There's another kind of distraction and damage, and that's to other students.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, I'll just say, to me, a cell phone's really only purpose when you're giving it to a student should be for communication purposes. We've got the one-to-one devices, so I can't see any, and with the different performance issues between phones, I can't see of an equitable way we could even expect kids to use a home provided cell phone for some type of academic purpose. So that to me is off the table. It's truly just about communication, distraction. And, way back in the day, if you had a family emergency, you called the school office, they sent a note to your classroom. Of course, in some ways that meant you knew where your kid was in the class or in the school and things like that. But I still think we always continue to have that wherever we land on this spectrum of communication. But to me, they're a communication tool. They're not an educational instrument. And so I'm more comfortable regulating them as communication and saying, what do we really need to allow access to? I don't think they need to be, and I think if you allow them to be physically on their person in the class, they're going to find ways to go to the bathroom and use them, or, just sit there and text all through the class. So they've got to be either in a locker, in a pouch on the thing, and then you've got the issues of how do we prevent kids from stealing somebody else's thing. So I think we've got some things to work through on that, but my preference is that there's just no access to anything in a classroom, because I think it's just a distraction for the teacher and the student. I think it just facilitates the dependency on the device. If we want to allow as much parent communication as possible, then you'd allow them access during passing times I'm not even crazy about giving them to them at recess because I think that's just a way to abuse, abuse access. And I've seen too many videoed fights, things like that. I would actually prefer that they not have access during recess times and we actually go back old school and talk to people, whatever. But if you need to, if parents need to text, you've at least got that in your passing times, keep it in your locker, make sure they're free and clear during class periods. But I'm all about like fairly stringent regulation because I don't think they're helpful in an educational sense. I think they're totally distracting and we're facilitating, enabling kids with these devices. I mean, I have an elementary school kid and when I have to change her schedule because she doesn't have a phone, I call the office. So it's manageable.
I fully support what Julie says. I'm a schooler and I still call the office. And he knows where the office phone is too.
No, I completely agree. It needs to be just strictly for the communication purposes, but also when cell phone, for me, I never had one until I graduated. So, because back for me, it's a luxury to have, and it's an opportunity to have that communication device with others. I have heard and seen the other comment of parents wanting that access to their children, making sure they're safe because sometimes during the school day, it's not cupcakes and rainbows, and either students are being bullied or students are having their own mental health or something is wrong. And whether a teacher is not hearing them or not advocating for them or something may have happened. I have friends that have, maybe the allergic reaction or type 1 diabetic and something happens in an emergent situation. That's when the parent would want that access or the child saying something's wrong, come to the school sort of thing. I've seen that aspect, but then I agree completely. Needs to be the zero tolerance. So I think the hard thing is to find that happy medium to make it. I know we cannot make everybody happy, but to find a scope of what can we do to at least address those needs as well.
Well, and I think that really puts the burden on us in some ways, in a good way, making sure our students know that they're, and I don't want to take a parent out of any communication, but we hire a ton of counselors and professionals and folks at our schools that we want the students to feel safe to. And I think if we're crippling them with devices and we're just going to, it's great if you've got an open line of communication with your parents, that's wonderful. Or if there's a medical emergency, I understand that, but I think you could probably work with your doctors on, are there medical alert things? Do you carry your EPIs?
Oh, absolutely. I think we can't, I mean, if this is the route we go, we'd have to do a case by case, right?
Right.
I mean, it's not, pretty sure at some point cell phones will become a medical accommodation.
Well, that's the thing is that eventually if we allow some, so we've got to, I think, try other things first. I mean, granted, if a medical professional says you have to have this with you to monitor your insulin, like, fine, not going to argue. But, understanding that if we allow them as accommodations, and that's going to be, it's like the service animal, it's going to be the exception that eats the rule. But it is an important reminder to us that we need to make sure students who are experiencing those problems know who a safe person is they can go to, or know what our staff are capable of doing for them, so that they have that resource as well. And maybe having that human interaction will help relieve some of these problems that now we're just so focused on head down into the machines, solve everything. So,
No, that sounds great. And then I think also just toggle back on what both have said too. Is there one thing I would want to find a way is more restricting on with the use of phones just in the classrooms, or like just in the passing periods as well, from kids using videos for social media purposes? Or is there a way for educators to minimize that as well? Because I've seen where kids take videos and posted them on their Snapchat, their TikTok, their Instagram of what's going on in the classroom. And that portrays that image for some parents, like nothing is getting done during the school day because my child's on social media throughout the day. So finding that way to minimize that, or just have it to go away.
Following on where Miranda took us into safety and medical issues. And Ideally, we could find a protocol. If we look for a protocol, it doesn't come easily because that's going to be a very difficult administrative burden. And I think that could be one of the trade-offs is to on the staff and the school district. And then depending on how we design the protocol, we better worry about liability, that horrible word, because we can have actual safety accidents and we can also have aggressive members of the public who want to make an issue of this. So it needs to be very defendable when we do it. And I'm just putting down very difficult things to do and no way helping to say they're feasible. But I think ideally that would be no distraction, academics only, but a protocol for safety and medical.
Thank you. Thank you. Other thoughts on this topic?
All those, like the water bags probably are not cheap. So like in terms of like what this costs, being aware of
Yeah.
like making a policy that then we have to put money behind to actually activate. So we should be aware during that discussion is
Yeah.
that there is a financial cost to this. And I think that there needs to be some more control of cell phones because right now, I think the amount of distraction that they provide is not what we want.
Yeah.
But recognizing that, like Martin was saying, policy consideration and the cost consideration need to be taken into account.
Yeah, we have to consider our return of investment, right? Cell phone access or more one-on-one academic learning time. Yes, there's an expense, just like, we're seeing with the smoke monitors in the bathrooms and whatnot, but the return of investment there is student safety. So I just want us to be cautious. And I think, you'll probably go into it maybe in your next slide, but.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, can I just add real quick
Mhm.
though? It kind of incorporates those because to the extent we're talking about regulating during the classroom, I think off the person, however we can make that work is reasonable. And I think as long as the student is in the classroom with a teacher, then we minimize some of those safety, medical and whatever concerns. So then it becomes really, maybe it's easier because the implementation is, well, they can have them during a passing period or may lose that privilege if they're late for too many classes or things like that. But that could be one way that it's addressed. But I think the clear is, not in the classroom, not on the person, at least while they're in the classroom.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Great dialogue, good discussion. And I think a lot of points were brought up that, that we want to engage the community on and our stakeholders too. It's like, we need to talk with our educators and our staff. We need to talk with our students and we need to talk with our families as well. And so that is the next slide here. And I, when we were talking about this as a policy committee, I shared the slide with them with the idea of, we have some work to do in this area. I think it has become, well, it's very newsworthy to have a district that is addressing cell phones. And it seems like there's a lot of work in that, but I don't think it's as simple as changing a policy just because there's so much that is connected to the cell phone. And so I think it's worth us taking the time to engage our community and to prepare them for whatever might be coming down from the work that we're doing. And so this was our thought. Cascade School District is already into some of the work with the implementation of redoing their cell phone policy work. Last spring, I met with their superintendent it's 2 weeks ago now, just to kind of get a feel for what it is that they're doing. And then Principal Eric Anderson has been collaborating with the new principal, James Swanson, up at Cascade as well. So there's some conversations that are happening there. But they began with public viewing of the movie Screenagers. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but obviously a play on, screen time and teenagers. And so that's something that I'll want to take a look at as well. And so they began that conversation with their community in the spring, and then they're continuing to engage in policy work and working with their stakeholders this year. So we'll continue to collaborate with them as well as they move through this process. But we need to engage our administrators, and we've done that a little bit already, but we need to continue that work. We also need to engage our teachers, our parents, and our students in the fall of this year to start having these conversations and to get a feel for what their voices have to say about the topic, and really uncover if there are any blind spots that we're not thinking about along the way, to make sure that we're looking at this comprehensively and fully, just like Miranda, when you brought up kind of that idea of the type 2 diabetes or the mental health or some of those things that we want to make sure that we continue to talk about. And then I'd also like to leverage this in our superintendent advisory council in September and October. Always walk away from any conversations with that group just with a renewed sense of how amazing our young people truly are and the things that they're thinking about that perhaps the adults aren't. And so that'll be a good conversation. Go ahead, Martin.
Yeah, I was going to say that's very insightful. They do bring in a sharp and distinctive perspective.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, after the engagement process, then to continue to collaborate and build a plan and a program for our secondary schools over the winter. Sorry, I just clicked the wrong button. Clicked my mic instead of the mic clicker. I'm like, let me just turn myself off. And then work on building a procedure around the outcomes of this work in the spring. And then ultimately launching the new program with a policy and a new procedure in the fall of 25 and 26 after having the time to go through the vetting process and get some feedback from our community. And wondering if there is potentially a board member or two that might want to, that is passionate about this work and might want to be involved along the way. I think that you'll all probably be able to play a part in some of this work, whether it's working with our parents or our community members or the teachers or the students. So there might be a place for everyone, but sounds like you all have some sort of passionate buy-in to this conversation. So we'll try to find a place for everyone, if that sounds okay. Any questions or comments on kind of this quick outline that we have here? Some of the work will be building specific too, as well as we work through the 5 different secondary schools. And then some of it will be more of a community conversation as well. But we want to get some engagement at this building level so we can get more voices as well. So we'll be working with our administrators to see exactly how that is going to roll out.
I have a comment. Don't underestimate. I like the fact that this is a phased, well thought out process that people will participate in. Don't underestimate that might change behavior somewhat in the course of simply announcing that you're doing it. And so I think work hard on the messaging of what the program is intended to do. I don't know, we might not be lucky, but it wouldn't surprise me to see that it'll encourage better behavior.
I appreciate that. That would be a nice byproduct of the work as you're working through it. Yes.
We'll talk about it.
Yes. Exactly.
And I appreciate the approach of engaging our stakeholders and coming at it as an educational piece, right? I just think there's more and more research out there on the impact that has not only in the learning environment, but also on the developing of the brain of a child at a young age, even in adults, right? So I really, I like the approach that Cascade is, sharing with us about, hey, this is a partnership. Let's work together. It's an approach of let's learn together.
Yeah, I appreciate that. One of the things we talked about as a policy committee, I was as I did a FAQ Friday on cell phone policies and the fact that the Wenatchee School District is going to engage in this work. One of our counselors from the high school shared that he had a professional read of a book called The Anxious Generation. And so I think we're gonna grab that book and as a policy committee, do a little book study of our own as we move through this process to help inform us. Because I've heard it's an interesting read and it'll just help guide us. So, yep. Excellent. Thank you for the time and the feedback. I appreciate that. One of the things that also came from our time together in May in our board workshop was board goals. And talking about the goals, we know that the board has goals for the superintendent, and a lot of the work is driven through this the symbiotic relationship that we have together. But what would potentially be some board goals? So workshop sessions where these are some of the things that we talked about. These are things you wanted to see. Some workshop sessions where the board answers questions and helps brainstorm a problem in practice. We got to do that today a little bit, which is awesome. But more of those I think would be great. And as we look at, as I kind of am planning out those board workshops, looking at the time structure there. So what can we get done in a board workshop that might take 45 minutes potentially? And then we also have another half of that board workshop to address some problems and do some brainstorming and some problem solving together as a team, because that might be nice too. Not every workshop needs to be an hour and a half long on just one single topic. Something for us to think about. And then working with and finding conversations through disaggregated data. Martin, you've mentioned that today already, so I appreciate that. And then continuing to celebrate the good. How are we sharing the story of positive pieces of work happening? And so those are some ideas that came out of the workshop, but we didn't have time to necessarily unpack them. So I didn't know if you wanted to take our last 9 minutes or so to maybe unpack some ideas here. And then for another time, we can actually maybe drill down on some other board goals that I can prompt through our weekly communications. Awkward. No, just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. No, you're processing and moving through that.
I mean, I would say that we covered a lot of ground in this workshop. So trying to, cover multiple things in one workshop doesn't seem like that would be impossible.
Nope.
It would be, also if we had a speaker or something set, teeing up whatever we're going to talk about, or this is something like, when Jake came in and was going to talk about his stuff, like you can start with that. And then, okay, now we're going to talk about this. We're going to have a conversation about something or something different.
Yep.
I think the workshop time, as long as, once we go to the effort to get here, making it, stick with an hour and a half is fine, as opposed to saying, hey, okay, well, we did our 45 minutes. You guys can go.
Yeah.
That leveraging that time to use it the most effective way we can is good.
Yeah, it's valuable. It is 5, different individuals with busy schedules, lives, and everything. We've got you together. Let's maximize our time in the best way we can. Appreciate that, Tucker.
I think this type of setup where we are engaging in conversation, again, I think that was one of the frustrations from our parents in the community, our constituents, as the Columbia closure, right? We weren't engaging in conversations because a board meeting doesn't allow for that type of dialogue, right? Other than your discussion, your stance. But this sort of setup, like today, for example, it just allows us to hear our perspectives, our stance, our ideas in more of a conversation format.
I didn't go back to the meeting to try and get any ideas. I thought just shoot from the cuff a little bit, but I think problem solving and brainstorming, I think is interesting, but getting onto the calendar of workshops that you showed us half a year and asked for more. I was very frustrated that we didn't used to get that. And so I'm really glad to see that. And I think it needs to be flexible. But this is really just taking what you've already got, but embroidering a little bit. We all do make suggestions about things we're interested in and things that would be useful, but we do it kind of when we happen to be in an agenda meeting or just visiting. I think if we put on our own responsibility, just that a few times a year, you think about what are your issues and you can put them in the suggestion bucket for workshops and thinking. But the other characteristic is you might be talking about things that aren't ready to start for 2 years. So it's easier to have a workshop session on something that is going to develop over time than it's yesterday's crisis that you're dealing with it. So looking ahead, consciously putting ideas on areas that school district could focus on. And I think that all comes out through there. And the other thing that I think often happens is you can make corrections, you can find things are wrong, but often one good idea sparks another good idea. So celebrating the good often gives a lateral thinking bump to something else. So all of that characteristic, but in my mind, I didn't have anything to say, except I think that if we push further ahead, that diffuse thing can create a rich workshop calendar with these characteristics.
Awesome. Thanks, Martin. Actually,
Yeah, just kind of thinking, I mean, I think there should sort of be a suggestion option so that, because I do think this has been very valuable sitting at the table. I think we've had some great speakers that lead some good board workshops, but I think we've now been working together for a while. And so drilling down on some policies or some district specific things are really helpful. So like this conversation today on cell phones, maybe we can hit like AI in an upcoming one. I mean, we have some pretty big policies that we haven't. It's a lot to ask our policy committee just to say, what do you think? What do you want to do? But I think there's some just policy work we can all kind of do together. Should we visit the dress code? Kind of things like that. Just sort of things like that. So having that suggestion box saying, here's kind of an issue that we're seeing coming up, having the opportunity to kind of, where are we all at on it? What do we, I hear things there, maybe you don't hear anything, just having opportunities to share seems helpful.
absolutely appreciate that, Julie.
I would say the one thing that I didn't see up there that I know that it's going to be coming more and more thing is our facilities conversations. And I think that, having been to some of those meetings, the level of information that they're bringing is, I think, more than Miranda and I would be able to bring to the school meeting as like hey, I'm going to give you like the quick update.
Here's a summary of
For sure,
an hour
when
and a
they're
half.
talking about like, the quality of the infrastructure or the concerns about longevity or, some of those other things that are, not just kind of something that we need to have a conversation about, but also that I think in terms of what we need to prepare for, are pretty important for the whole board to have insight into. So
Great suggestion.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was silently thinking and on restructuring facilities committee and also later on if you have a bond committee, because there's a tendency for the board to get in compartments and isolated from what's going on in the committee. And there's no good mechanism to get the whole board, both input and hearing. The problem is how do you do that without making it a decision-making process? So I think it would be good with some of these committees, something like the committee could come and run a workshop with an opportunity for, in this case, the board of the stakeholders as individuals, but it would have to be, as it were, pre-decision. Because if we try to put it in the decision-making thing, then it would be awkward. I don't know whether that's feasible, but this is another, when I said you look well ahead, if you look well ahead, then it's not rigid and looks overly committed, but getting a report back so the whole board can get informed and also give input.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, and that's something I'd be interested in as well, because I know we are doing a lot of facility work and we trust our other board members to be the ears and things, but it would be nice to get more update, and especially if bond is not looking like it's going to be as quickly happening or may not be feasible given the climate of the state as it is. What are we doing now to to plan with loans or capital levies or things like that. Where are we in that? Because at some point the board will have to make a decision. What direction do we want to go down? So it'd be, it'd be nice to know where we're at in that planning process. What are we looking at as alternatives if a bond conversation is maybe not the ideal way to go?
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Thanks, Julie. Other thoughts as we near our 2:30 mark? Amazing. I just want to thank you all for the conversation, the dialogue, the time for today. I think we had a great, robust conversation, and we have some good things to look forward to moving forward. So thanks, everyone. Cool.